The applause sounded like rushing water just before the darkness took me. I had spent 33 years believing I could outrun exhaustion. But on that stage, my body finally quit. I woke up in a hospital bed expecting my parents, the people I had nearly killed myself to please. Instead, I found my grandfather sitting in the corner, holding a cold cup of coffee and a secret that would burn our family to the ground. The mirror in the university restroom offered a reflection I barely recognized. At 33, I looked less like a woman about to receive a master's degree and more like a ghost haunting her own life. The fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing frequency, highlighting the dark, bruised crescents beneath my eyes. I had not slept more than 4 hours a night for the last 3 months. I was running on caffeine, cortisol, and a terrifyingly fragile determination to just get through this one last day. I splashed cold water on my face, watching the droplets run down my pale skin. It was just one more ceremony, just one more performance. I told myself to push through. I had done it 100 times before. I had pushed through the migraine at my sister's wedding so I could coordinate the caterers. I had pushed through the flu during my father's 50th birthday party so I could drive the guests to the airport. Pushing through was not just a habit. It was my role in the family ecosystem. I was the engine that never stalled, the lights that never flickered. But today, the engine felt like it was grinding metal on metal. I dried my face with a rough paper towel and adjusted the heavy black fabric of my gown. The mortarboard cap sat awkwardly on my head, threatening to slide off if I moved too quickly. Outside the bathroom, the hallway was a river of excited students, a sea of black robes and colored tassels flowing toward the auditorium of Marblegate University. I stepped into the current. The noise hit me first, a roar of laughter, shouted names, and the squeak of dress shoes on linoleum. It made my teeth ache. I checked my phone for the 5th time in 10 minutes. No new messages. My parents had promised to be there by 9 o'clock. It was now 9:45. The ceremony began at 10. I walked toward the auditorium doors, my legs feeling strangely detached from my body, as if I were wading through waist-deep water. Inside, the cavernous space was already buzzing with AS energy. Families were packed into the tiered seating, waving handmade signs and holding bouquets of flowers wrapped in crinkling plastic. I saw a father lift a toddler onto his shoulders so she could wave at her mother down on the floor. I saw a group of siblings screaming a name, their faces bright with unalloyed pride. I found my assigned seat in the graduate section and sat down heavily. The chair was hard plastic, uncomfortable and grounding. I pulled my phone out again. A text had finally come through, running late. Save us seats. Traffic is a nightmare. I stared at the screen. They were 2 hours away. If they were hitting traffic now, they were not just running late. They were barely moving. And save us seats. In a packed auditorium where ushers were already aggressively filling gaps, I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. I can't save seats. It's full. Just get here when you can. I put the phone away, a familiar cold stone of anxiety settling in my stomach. It was not the disappointment that hurt. I had calluses over that part of my heart. It was the logistics. I immediately began calculating how I would manage their moods when they arrived and could not find a good view. I worried about whether my father would snap at an usher, or if my mother would make loud, passive-aggressive comments about the university's poor organization. Even here, at my own graduation, I was already managing their experience. The ceremony began with a swell of orchestral music. The dean of the college walked onto the stage, his robes billowing. I tried to focus on his speech, something about horizons and leadership, but the words swam in the air like dust motes. My heart was beating too fast. It was a fluttering, uneven rhythm that I could feel in my throat. Just hydration. I told myself, you forgot to drink water this morning, but it felt like more than thirst. A strange heat was rising up the back of my neck, prickling at my scalp. The air in the auditorium felt thick, recycled, and devoid of oxygen. I loosened the collar of my gown, but it did not help. The reading of the names began. I watched my classmates stand up, walk to the stairs, cross the stage, shake the hand, take the diploma, and exit. Stand, walk, shake, take, exit. It was a rhythmic assembly line of achievement. Eleanor Price, the voice boomed over the speakers. The sound of my own name startled me. I stood up. My knees unlocked with a jerk. The blood rushed from my head, leaving my vision speckled with gray static. I grabbed the back of the chair in front of me to steady myself. The graduate sitting there turned and gave me a concerned look. "I'm fine," I whispered, though the words sounded muffled to my own ears. I moved into the aisle. The walk to the stage stairs felt miles long. Every step required a conscious command to my muscles. Lift right, plant right, lift left, plant left. I reached the stairs. I gripped the handrail, the metal cold and slick under my palm. I pulled myself up. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. I was on the stage. The lights were blinding. They were not just bright, they were physical, pressing against my eyeballs with actual weight. I could not see the audience. I could not see my parents, even if they had managed to slip in. There was just a wall of white glare in the dark, watery abyss beyond it. I started walking toward the dean. He was smiling, holding out a leather-bound folder. Almost there. I thought, just take it, smile, walk off, then you can sit down. But the floor betrayed me. It seemed to tilt violently to the left. I corrected my balance, stumbling slightly, but then it tilted to the right. The applause from the audience sounded distant, like waves crashing against a shore miles away. It turned into a rushing roar, a sound of water filling a sealed room. My heart gave a massive, painful thud, skipping a beat, then racing to catch up. The dean's face warped. His smile stretched and melted. I reached out for him, not for the diploma, but for something to hold. My hand swiped through empty air. The darkness came in from the edges of my vision. A swift, black vignette closing in. I felt my legs give way. Not slowly, but all at once. The last thing I registered was the hardwood floor rushing up to meet my face and the sudden, terrified silence that cut through the applause. I did not wake up all at once. I floated in a gray, disjointed space where time did not exist. I heard the wail of a siren, close and piercing. I felt the rumble of the road beneath me, the sway of a vehicle taking a corner too fast. Pulse is thready, BP is 90/60 and dropping. A man's voice, calm, professional, urgent. Did she hit her head? Witnesses say she crumpled before she hit the floor. Minimal trauma to the skull. But watch for concussion. I tried to open my eyes. The lids felt like lead curtains. I managed to slit of vision the ribbed metal ceiling of an ambulance. Bright lights, a plastic mask over my face pushing cool oxygen into my nose. "Eleanor, can you hear me?" A face hovered over me, a paramedic, young, kind eyes, blue nitrile gloves near my neck. I groaned. "Okay, stay with us. Eleanor, we're taking you to Larkfield Medical. Do you have any allergies?" "No," I mumbled into the mask. "Are you on any medication?" "Just anxiety." "Mild." "Okay, we're seeing some arrhythmia here. Are you taking anything else?" "Supplements cold medicine." "No." "Who should we call?" "Eleanor. Is there family we can contact?" The question triggered a reflex so deep it bypassed my conscious brain. It was the programming of 3 decades. "Mom," I whispered. "Dad, Robert and Linda Price." "Okay, we'll get them on the line as soon as we get you stabilized. Just breathe." I drifted again. The siren faded into a dull hum. The next time the world sharpened, I was on a gurney, moving fast through double doors. The air smelled of antiseptic and floor wax. Voices were overlapping. Female, 33, syncope at a public event, tachycardic. A nurse appeared beside me, holding a clipboard. She looked harried, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. "Eleanor, honey, I need to ask you something quickly," she said, leaning close to my ear. "We're going to call your emergency contacts. I see a file here from a previous visit years ago. I need to confirm you have a release of information on file for your parents. Can we speak to them about your condition?" My brain was sluggish, wading through molasses, a release I didn't remember signing a new release, but I must have. I always did whatever paperwork they put in front of me. Yes, I slurred. Call them. And you authorize us to discuss your medical details with them, Robert and Linda Price. Yes, I said. Please. I just wanted them to know. I wanted my mother to be there. I wanted the safety of being a child. Just for an hour, I wanted them to come and take over, to tell the doctors I was just tired, to drive me home. Okay, the nurse said, making a check mark on her clipboard. We're calling them now. I closed my eyes, the relief of surrendering responsibility washing over me like a warm blanket. They were coming. They would handle it. I slept, or maybe I was unconscious. It was a deep, black, dreamless void. When I finally surfaced, the room was quiet. The frantic energy of the emergency room was gone, replaced by the steady, rhythmic beep of a cardiac monitor. I blinked, my eyes gritty. I was in a hospital room. The window shades were drawn, letting in slatted lines of late afternoon sun. The light had that golden, heavy quality that meant the day was almost over. I turned my head on the pillow, expecting to see my mother pacing, or my father reading a magazine in the corner chair. I braced myself for the lecture about not eating enough, about making a scene, about ruining the graduation photos. But the chair in the corner did not hold my parents. It held an old man in a wool coat that was too heavy for the season. My grandfather, Walter Price, sat with his hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee. He was staring at the floor, his posture rigid. He looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe it was just the large, sterile room swallowing him up. His gray hair was neatly combed, but his eyes, when he lifted them to meet mine, were rimmed with red. Grandpa, I rasped. My throat felt like sandpaper. Walter stood up immediately. Setting the coffee down on the side table, he moved to the bedside, his movements stiff but steady. He took my hand. His skin was dry and cool, his grip surprisingly strong. Ellie, he said softly, you're back. Water, I whispered. He reached for a plastic pitcher and poured a small cup. Holding the straw to my lips, I drank greedily. The water was lukewarm, but it tasted like life itself. Where? I looked past him toward the door. Where are Mom and Dad? Walter set the cup down. He did not look at the door. He looked at me, and his expression hardened. It wasn't anger directed at me. It was a cold, quiet fury that I had rarely seen in him. Walter was a gentleman, a man of woodworking and quiet Sundays. This look was something else. They aren't here, Ellie, he said. Traffic, I asked, my mind still trying to fit the pieces into the usual shape. Did they get stuck? Walter pulled the chair closer and sat down. Leaning forward, his elbows on his knees, he held my gaze, refusing to let me look away. The hospital called them, Walter said. His voice was measured, precise. They called them 3 times. And they answered the first time, Walter said. The nurse told them you had collapsed, that you were unconscious and being admitted for cardiac monitoring. I waited. The silence stretched, tight as a bowstring. And, I asked again, my voice trembling, your mother asked the nurse if you would be fine by morning. The words hung in the air, fine by morning. The nurse told them it was serious, Walter continued. She told them they needed to come, your father said. He said they would wait for an update later. I felt a cold sensation spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. They didn't come. No. But why are you here? I was listed as the secondary contact, Walter said, on an old form from when you had your wisdom teeth out. The hospital called me when your parents didn't show up within the hour. He squeezed my hand. I came straight here. I've been here for 4 hours. I stared at the ceiling tiles. I counted the little perforations. 1, 2, 3, 4. They asked if I would be fine by morning. I repeated. Yes. Because they had plans, I said. The realization arriving not as a shock, but as a dull, heavy confirmation of something I had always known but never looked at directly. "We'll get to that," Walter said grimly. The door opened, and a doctor walked in. She was middle-aged, with short dark hair and a tablet in her hands. She looked from Walter to me, her expression softening slightly. "Ms. Price, good to see you awake. I'm Dr. Evans." She checked the monitor, then the IV bag hanging beside my bed. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," I said. "Confused." "That's to be expected." "Doctor," Evans said, "you gave everyone quite a scare. We've run a full blood panel and an EKG. Your heart rhythm is stabilizing, but we're going to keep you overnight for observation." She tapped on her tablet. "We found a few things that created a perfect storm. You were severely dehydrated, your iron levels are critically low anemia we need to address, and you are exhausted. But there was a third factor." She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "We found high levels of a stimulant in your system. Combined with the anti-anxiety medication listed in your chart, it caused a dangerous drop in blood pressure and the arrhythmia." I frowned. "Stimulant? I don't take stimulants. I drank coffee." "This wasn't coffee, Doctor," Evans said. "It looks like a prescription-grade focus medication, and the interaction was exacerbated because your anxiety prescription was refilled recently at a higher dosage. Did your psychiatrist discuss increasing the milligrams with you?" I tried to sit up, but the room spun, so I sank back. "No, I haven't seen my psychiatrist in 6 months. I'm on the maintenance dose, the lowest dose." "Doctor." Evans swiped on her screen. "According to the pharmacy records we accessed, which we can do in emergencies, a refill was picked up 3 days ago. It was a 90-day supply, at double your previous strength. And the interaction notes suggest you might have been advised to take it with the stimulant for performance reasons. Did you take a pill from a different bottle this morning?" My mind raced. I had taken my pill this morning, from the bottle on the bathroom counter, the same bottle that had been there all week. I just took what was in the cabinet, my mom. "She picked up my refill for me last week because I was studying. She said she put it in the cabinet." "Doctor." Evans exchanged a look with Walter. It was a subtle glance, professional but communicative. "Ms. Price," the doctor said carefully, "the combination of these 2 drugs, especially with your anemia, could have caused cardiac arrest. You are very lucky you were surrounded by paramedics when you went down." "I didn't know," I said, tears pricking my eyes. "I swear I didn't know." "I believe you, Doctor," Evans said. "But we need to be very clear about what you are putting in your body from now on. No more accepting medication management from anyone else. Understood?" "Yes." "Rest now. I'll be back in a few hours to check your vitals." "Doctor." Evans left the room. The silence she left behind was heavy. Walter still had not let go of my hand. "Double strength," Walter murmured to himself. "And a stimulant." "Mom picked it up," I said, defending her out of reflex. "She was trying to help. She knows how stressed I've been with finals. Maybe the pharmacy made a mistake." Walter didn't answer. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out my cell phone. He had retrieved it from my bag. "You should look at this," he said. He handed me the phone. The screen was cracked across the corner, a souvenir from my fall. I unlocked it. There were 7 unread messages, all from Mom and Dad. I opened the thread. Expecting to see panic, I expected to see, "Where are you? Is everything okay? We are on our way." I read the first message, sent 10 minutes after my collapse. "Mom, you scared everyone. People are staring at us." I scrolled down. "Dad, we are waiting in the parking lot. They said the ambulance took you. Let us know when you are done." "Mom, we had a dinner reservation at the Orr House for 5 o'clock. We can't cancel it or we lose the deposit. Dad, this is just like you to make this dramatic. Just text us when you are discharged." "Mom." "Seriously, Eleanor, answer the phone. We are not driving to the hospital if you are just going to be released. We will meet you at the restaurant." The last message was from 20 minutes ago. "Dad, we are going to dinner. You clearly aren't answering. Call us tomorrow." I read them twice, then a third time. My graduation. the culmination of 5 years of graduate school. I was lying in a hospital bed with a heart monitor strapped to my chest, and they were worried about a dinner reservation deposit. They weren't scared for me. They were embarrassed by me. "They went to dinner," I whispered. The phone felt heavy in my hand, like a brick. Walter leaned back in his chair. He took a sip of his cold coffee, his eyes never leaving my face. "What plans?" Walter asked quietly, his voice filling the empty spaces of the room. "Were more important than your life." I looked at him. I wanted to make an excuse. I wanted to say, "They just don't understand hospitals, or they handle stress differently." But the words died in my throat. The evidence was glowing on the screen in my hand. "Dinner," I said. "Dinner was more important." Walter nodded slowly. It was a nod of finality. He reached over and took the phone from my hand, placing it face down on the table, silencing the world outside. "Sleep, Eleanor," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." I closed my eyes. But the darkness wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with the image of my parents sitting at a white tablecloth, ordering wine, while I lay here listening to the beat of my own heart, wondering why it had bothered to keep beating at all. But as I drifted off, I heard the rustle of Walter's coat as he settled deeper into the hard plastic chair. He was staying, and for the first time in my life, I realized that the people who should have been there weren't, and the person I hadn't expected was the only one who mattered. The engine had stalled, and I was done pushing. The wheelchair ride to the curb felt performative. I could walk. My legs were shaky. Yes, but they worked. Yet hospital policy dictated that I be wheeled out like a piece of fragile porcelain, discharged into the care of a responsible adult. Walter walked beside me, carrying a plastic bag containing my clothes from the night before the graduation gown folded with surprising neatness, the mortarboard cap resting on top. He walked with a military cadence, his boots making a solid, reassuring sound against the linoleum. "Doctor." Evans had been clear, her voice devoid of the usual medical detachment. "You are not going back to work this week, Eleanor," she had said, standing at the foot of my bed with her arms crossed. "And you are not going back to whatever routine put you here. I am prescribing rest, but that is not a suggestion. Your heart rhythm is back to normal, but your electrolytes are still a mess, and your cortisol levels are through the roof. If you stress your system right now, you will be back here, and next time, you might not wake up." She had looked at me over her glasses, a look that felt uncomfortably intimate. "You are 33 years old," she added. "You have the physiology of someone running from a predator. I don't know what you are running from, but you need to stop. You are carrying more than you admit." I sat in the passenger seat of Walter's old truck, watching the hospital recede in the side mirror. The late morning sun was bright, aggressive. It glared off the windshields of passing cars. I felt raw, as if the top layer of my skin had been scrubbed away. "We are going to my place," Walter said. It was not a question. "I need to go home, Grandpa," I said, leaning my head against the cool glass. "I have to check my email. I have to send thank you notes for the people who didn't come." "You are coming to my house," Walter repeated. He signaled a turn, his hand large and weathered on the steering wheel. "Your fridge has nothing in it but expired yogurt and condiments. I checked last week. You are staying with me until you can stand up without swaying like a sapling in a gale." I did not argue. I did not have the energy. Walter's house was a small, bungalow-style structure in a quiet neighborhood where the trees were old and the lawns were manicured with obsessive devotion. It smelled of sawdust, lemon polish, and old paper, the scent of my childhood summers. He led me to the guest room. The bed was already made with crisp, white sheets. A glass of water sat on the nightstand. It was inviting, safe, and terrifyingly quiet. "Rest," Walter commanded. "I'm going to make soup. Real soup. Not that sodium water you buy in cans." I lay down, intending to check my phone for 5 minutes. I woke up 4 hours later. The light in the room had shifted, casting long orange rectangles across the floor. I sat up, panic flaring in my chest for a moment before I remembered where I was. Safe. I am safe. I walked out to the kitchen. Walter was sitting at his small circular dining table. He wasn't cooking. He was working. He had a pair of reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. Spread out before him was a grid of paperwork. I recognized the discharge summary, the pharmacy receipt from the bag he had picked up, and a notepad where he had written a list of times and dates in his neat, blocky handwriting. "What are you doing?" I asked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. Walter looked up. He didn't sweep the papers away or try to hide them. "Documenting," he said. "Documenting what?" "Everything," he replied. "The time of admission, the names of the doctors, the list of medications they found in your system, the call logs from your phone." I walked over and looked at the notepad. He had written 10:14 a.m. Parents contacted, no answer. 10:22 a.m. Parents contacted, answered, declined to attend. "Grandpa," I said, a tightness forming in my throat. "You don't need to do this. It's just a medical thing. It's over." "It is not over," Walter said. He tapped the paper with his pen. "This was not an accident. Eleanor, a car crash is an accident. A flu virus is an accident. Taking a double dose of a drug you didn't know you had. While dehydrated, while under extreme duress, that is a sequence of events. And sequences have architects." I pulled out a chair and sat down. "You think I did it to myself?" "I think you were steered," he said. "And I want to know who was holding the wheel." I wanted to dismiss him. I wanted to tell him he was being a paranoid old man. But the memory of Dr. Evans' voice prescription refill that should never have been approved stopped me. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I needed a distraction. I opened my email. Scrolling past the junk mail and the graduation alerts from the university, there was a notification from the Larkfield Medical Center patient portal. Subject: new activity on your account. I frowned. I hadn't logged in. I tapped the email. A request for medical records access was submitted at 9:15 a.m. today. Status approved. "Grandpa," I said, my voice sounding thin, "did you ask for my medical records this morning?" Walter looked up. "No, I have the discharge papers right here. Why?" "Someone logged into my portal," I said, "at 9:15, while I was asleep in the guest room." I tapped the link to the portal, my fingers fumbling with the password. I got in. I navigated to the Access Logs tab. There was a request form uploaded. It was titled Authorized Representative Declaration. It claimed that due to my medical incapacitation, the signatory was granted immediate access to my full history, billing details, and physician notes. The signatory was listed as Linda Price, my mother. "She requested access," I said. "This morning?" "She said she was worried," Walter said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Does it say how she got approved?" "She uploaded a signed consent form," I said, opening the attachment. It says I signed it." The PDF opened on my small screen. It was a standard IPAA release form. At the bottom, there was a signature. Eleanor M. Price. I stared at it. The room seemed to tilt again. It looked like my signature. The loop of the L was tall. The P had the sharp downstroke I always used. But the R at the end of Price, it curled up. I always trailed my R down. "That's not me," I whispered. Walter stood up and came around the table. He peered at the screen. "Are you sure?" "I didn't sign anything this morning," I said. "I was asleep. And look at the date on the form. It's dated yesterday. I was unconscious yesterday." "Call the records office," Walter said. Now, I dialed the number listed at the bottom of the portal page. It rang 4 times before a tired-sounding administrative assistant picked up. "Medical records? This is Sarah." "Hi, this is Eleanor Price. My date of birth is July 12th, 1992. I'm looking at a release form on my portal that I don't remember signing." "One moment," Sarah said. I heard the clicking of a keyboard. "Okay, I see it. Uploaded this morning by a Linda Price. It was flagged as urgent due to patient incapacitation." "I am the patient," I said. "I am not incapacitated. I was discharged hours ago." Oh, Sarah said. Her voice shifted, becoming guarded. Well, the form appeared valid. It has your signature and a witness signature. Who is the witness? I asked. Robert Price. Sarah read, my father. My father had witnessed my mother forging my signature while I was lying in a hospital bed they couldn't be bothered to visit. I need you to revoke that access immediately, I said, my hand gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. And I need a copy of that form emailed to me directly. A high-resolution copy. I can revoke it, Sarah said. But if it's a family dispute— It is fraud, Walter said loudly, leaning close to the phone. Just revoke it, please, I said. And send the file. I hung up. The email arrived 30 seconds later. I zoomed in on the signature. It was a good forgery. It was a practiced forgery. It was the signature of someone who had signed my name on field trip permission slips, report cards, and birthday checks for 30 years. They wanted to see the doctor's notes, Walter said. Why? To see if I was okay, I offered, though the hope felt hollow. To see what you told the doctors, Walter corrected, and to see if the toxicology report mentioned the pills. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a FaceTime request. Mom. I looked at Walter. He nodded. Answer it, but do not tell them you know about the form yet. Let them talk. I took a deep breath and accepted the call. My mother's face filled the screen. She was in her kitchen. The lighting was warm, under cabinet halogen. She was holding a glass of white wine. In the background, I could see my father sitting at the island, looking at a tablet. Eleanor, she exclaimed. She didn't look worried. She looked annoyed, like I was late for a lunch date. Finally, we have been texting you all day. I was in the hospital. Mom, I said. I was asleep. Well, we knew you were out, she said, taking a sip of wine. We called the nurse. She said you were stable. Honestly, Eleanor, you have got to start taking better care of yourself. Passing out at graduation. It was very dramatic. Dramatic, I repeated. Your father was mortified, she said, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. People were looking at us like we had done something to you. We had to leave early to avoid the traffic. You didn't come to the hospital, I said. I didn't mean to say it. It just slipped out. A small, wounded bird of a sentence. My mother paused. She swirled the wine in her glass. We couldn't, honey. The traffic was bumper to bumper heading toward the medical center, and the nurse said you were sleeping. What were we going to do? Sit in a waiting room for 4 hours. We are not young. Eleanor, we need our rest too. I could have died, I said. The doctor said I had a heart arrhythmia. Oh, doctors always exaggerate. My father's voice cut in. He didn't look up from his tablet. They do it to bill insurance more. You fainted. You need to eat a steak. I didn't just faint, I said, anger finally sparking in my chest. I had a drug interaction. From the refill you picked up. Mom. My mother's face didn't change. She didn't flinch. I just picked up what the pharmacy gave me. Don't blame me if you can't manage your own pills. The dosage was double, I said. And doctor, Evan said someone accessed my records this morning to check the notes. Did you log into my portal? My mother blinked. It was a slow, deliberate blink. We needed to talk to the doctors because you were unconscious, she said smoothly. We are your parents. We have a right to know if you are capable. I wasn't unconscious this morning, I said. I was discharged, and you signed my name. I signed as your representative, she said, her voice turning sharp. Don't start accusing us of things. Eleanor, we are trying to help you. We are always cleaning up your messes. My mess? I laughed. A sharp, jagged sound. I graduated with a master's degree yesterday. That was the event. That was the mess. And you ruined it, my father said. Finally looking at the camera, his eyes were cold, blue, and empty of sympathy. We didn't even get a photo. Do you know how that looks? The Prices always have a photo. Is that all that matters? I asked. Did you get the letter? My father asked abruptly. I paused. What letter? The letter, he said impatiently. It should have arrived at your apartment yesterday, or maybe today. Important mail. I haven't been home, I said. I'm at Grandpa's. My parents exchanged a look. It was a quick, darting glance that spoke volumes. Why are you at Walter's? My mother asked, her voice tight. You should be in your own bed. He came to get me, I said. Since you were busy, go home. Eleanor, my father said. Get the letter. It requires your attention. It's time sensitive. Don't let Walter fill your head with his nonsense. He's getting senile. I'm sitting right here, Robert, Walter said, leaning into the frame. My parents froze. My mother actually took a step back from the phone. Walter, my father said, I didn't know you were listening. I bet you didn't, Walter said. Eleanor is staying with me, and she won't be signing any letters until I read them. My father's jaw tightened. It's family business. Walter, stay out of it. She is my family, Walter said. And she is an adult. Goodbye. Walter reached out and ended the call. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. They want you to go to your apartment, Walter said. So we are going to your apartment. Now. Now, Walter said, before they have a chance to go there themselves. My apartment was only 20 minutes away. On the second floor of a converted brownstone, it was usually my sanctuary, a place of books, soft blankets, and order, but when I unlocked the door, the air felt stale, disturbed. Stay here, Walter said. He walked in first, checking the rooms. It was a small place, living room, bedroom, tiny kitchen. It's clear, he said. But look. He pointed to my desk in the corner of the living room. It was a vintage secretary desk with a roll top. I always kept it closed. It was open about 2 inches. I walked over, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pulled the top up. My papers were usually stacked in precise piles. Bills to be paid, receipts to be filed, correspondence. The piles were messy, shuffled. I opened the drawer where I kept my important documents. My passport was usually at the back. Under my birth certificate, it was now sitting on top, slightly crooked. My social security card was wedged between 2 old checkbooks. Someone was here, I whispered. They have a key. Your parents have a key, Walter asked. Yes, for emergencies. Change the locks, Walter said. Today. He pointed to a thick cream-colored envelope sitting right in the center of the desk blotter. It had no postage. It had been hand-delivered. Eleanor Price was written on the front in stiff, formal calligraphy. I picked it up. It felt heavy. I tore it open. Inside was a document on thick, bonded paper, notice of beneficiary status review and distribution readiness. It was from a firm called Hollowcrest Fiduciary Services. I scanned the text. It was dense legalese. Words like irrevocable trust, maturity date, and contingent upon successful completion of higher education jumped out at me. Grandpa, I said, handing him the letter. What is this? Walter put on his glasses. He read it slowly, his lips moving slightly. I knew it, he muttered. I knew they would try it. Try what? This is a notification that a trust fund once set up in your name by your great-aunt is set to vest. It says the condition for access was your graduation with a postgraduate degree. I have a trust fund, I asked. I took out student loans. I have $60,000 in debt. Why did I take out loans if I have a trust fund? Because, Walter said, looking up with eyes full of sorrow. Your parents likely told the trustees that you didn't need it yet, or that you weren't ready. They kept it hidden. But why? Keep reading, Walter said. I looked at the second page. Please note, due to the complexity of the asset structure, the beneficiary. Eleanor Price may designate a trustee representative to manage the initial distribution and reinvestment. If no designation is made within 48 hours of the maturity event graduation date, the default guardians Robert and Linda Price will retain administrative oversight for a period of 5 years. 48 hours, I said. That's tomorrow. That's why they wanted the letter signed, Walter said. They wanted you to sign over the management of the money to them for 5 more years. And if I didn't sign it, then the money becomes yours directly, Walter said, and they lose access to whatever management fees they have been paying themselves out of it. I sank onto my sofa. The room felt like it was spinning again. They watched me work 3 jobs, I said. They watched me panic over tuition. They let me take out loans with 6% interest. And the whole time, there was money. There was money, Walter confirmed. And they want to keep it. We need to check everything, I said, a sudden frantic energy seizing me. If they hid this, what else is there? I grabbed my laptop from my bag and opened it. I sat on the floor, using the coffee table as a desk. Credit report, Walter said. Check it now. I navigated to the credit bureau site. I had to answer security questions about cars I had never owned and streets I had never lived on. Finally, the report loaded. I scrolled past the student loans, past my one credit card with a $500 limit. Then I stopped. Under open accounts, there was a line item I didn't recognize. Briarstone Lending, personal loan, opened February 12, 2024. Balance, $25,000. $25,000, I breathed. I didn't take out a loan. Walter leaned over my shoulder. Look at the payment history. Current. Last payment made by R. Price. My father had taken out a loan in my name, and he was paying it, which meant he had expected to keep paying it, or pay it off, without me ever knowing. Why? I asked. Why use my name if he's paying it? Because his credit is likely shot. Walter said, and yours was pristine. He used you as a bridge. Eleanor, a fresh identity to burn. I scrolled down further. There was a hard inquiry from Briarstone Lending dated 3 days ago, just before graduation. They were trying to refinance it, Walter guessed. Or increase it. Maybe they thought the trust money would cover it. I closed the laptop. I felt sick, physically sick. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was mathematical. It was quantified in interest rates and maturation dates. They own me, I said. My name is on paperwork I never saw. My debt is real, but the money isn't mine. My medical records are open to them. Walter sat down on the floor next to me. He was an old man, and getting down there was not easy. But he did it. He sat cross-legged, his knees cracking. He took my hands in his. They don't own you, Walter said. They rented you, without your permission. How do I fix this? I asked, tears finally spilling over. It's too much. I can't fight them. They're my parents. Walter reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. He handed it to me. I have suspected for a long time that they were using you, he said. I saw the way they talked about your achievements like they were assets in a portfolio. Not moments in a life, but I never had proof. I never had the paper. He gestured to the letter from the trust and the laptop screen. Now we have the paper, he said. They are going to hate me, I said. If I stop this, if I take the money, they will destroy me. They are already destroying you. Eleanor, Walter said softly, look at where you woke up this morning. You were in a cardiac ward. They nearly killed you to keep their ledger balanced. He stood up, offering me a hand. They crossed a line, Walter said, his voice hardening into steel. A line that doesn't uncross. You are not going to be their bridge anymore. You are going to be the fire that burns it down. I took his hand and stood up. The dizziness was gone. In its place was something colder, sharper. Pack a bag, Walter said. Get your passport. Get your birth certificate. Get every piece of paper in that desk. You are not coming back here tonight. I nodded. I went to the bedroom and opened my closet. I grabbed a duffel bag. I didn't pack clothes. I packed files. I packed the hard drive from my desk. I packed the physical evidence of my existence. When I walked back out to the living room, Walter was standing by the window, watching the street. They're here, he said. I froze. What? Your father's car just pulled up. Walter said, grab your things. We are going out the back fire escape. I looked at the door. I could hear the heavy footsteps on the stairs. I didn't hesitate. I followed Walter to the kitchen window that opened onto the metal grate of the fire escape. As I climbed out into the cool evening air, I heard the key turn in my front door lock. "Eleanor," my father's voice called out, smooth and commanding. "We know you're in here." I didn't answer. I followed my grandfather down the rusted metal stairs, leaving my old life and the daughter who would have answered that call behind in the empty apartment. The office of Kellis Rowe Legal Group did not look like the law firms in the movies. There were no walls of mahogany books, no dramatic lighting, and no intimidating receptionist silently judging my shoes. It was a sterile, glass-walled space on the fourth floor of a mid-rise building, smelling faintly of ozone and expensive coffee. It felt like a surgical theater, which turned out to be appropriate, because Mara Kellis did not treat my life like a tragedy. She treated it like a trauma patient bleeding out on a table. Walter had called her from the car as we sped away from my apartment. He had spoken in short, clipped sentences, citing a name I didn't recognize as a referral. By the time we arrived, Mara was waiting for us in a conference room that looked out over the gray skyline of the city. She was a woman of indeterminate age, with sharp features and hair cut into a severe, stylish bob. She wore a gray suit that looked like armor. She didn't offer tea. She didn't offer sympathy. She offered a legal pad and a pen. "Sit," she said. "Talk. Facts only. Start with the graduation." I sat. My hands were shaking, so I clasped them on the cold table. I told her about the collapse. I told her about the hospital. I told her about the unauthorized medical access, the forged signature, and the loan notification I had found in my desk. Mara wrote constantly while I spoke. She didn't gasp. She didn't look shocked. She just organized the disaster into bullet points. When I finished, silence filled the room. Walter was sitting next to me, his posture rigid, like a guard dog on duty. Mara tapped her pen against the pad. "Eleanor," she said, her voice cool and level, "I need you to understand what we are looking at. This is not a family dispute. This is an orchestrated absorption of your legal identity." "Absorption?" I asked. The word made my stomach turn. "It is common in high-control family dynamics," Mara explained. "They don't steal your identity in the traditional sense. They don't buy a yacht in the Bahamas. They simply refuse to acknowledge that your identity is separate from theirs. They view your credit score, your medical rights, and your assets as an extension of the family estate. To them, signing your name isn't forgery, it is administration." "They took out a loan," I said. $25,000. "That we know of," Mara corrected. "If they have your social security number and copies of your identification, which they likely kept from when you were a minor, they could have opened accounts anywhere. But the scary part isn't the loan, it is the access." She turned her laptop around to face me. "You said you found an email about the portal access. Have you checked your sent folder?" "No," I said. "Why would I?" "Because if they are logging in to read your mail, they are likely replying to it too." She said, "Log in, now." I typed in my credentials. My fingers felt clumsy. I navigated to the sent folder. The most recent email was one I had sent to my thesis advisor 3 days ago. But below that, my breath hitched. There was an email sent 2 weeks ago to verification, BriarstoneLending.com. Subject income verification letter. I opened it. "To whom it may concern, please find attached the requested employment verification and projected income statement for Eleanor Price, as discussed. The trust distribution is anticipated post-graduation. Best, Eleanor." I hadn't written it. I hadn't attached anything. "I didn't send this," I whispered. "It was sent at 2 a.m. I was asleep." "Scroll down," Mara said. There was another one. "Sent to a bank I didn't bank with. Subject change of address confirmation. Please update the billing address on file to the following P.O. Box, 404 Oak Creek." Oak Creek was my parents' town. "They moved my mail," I said, looking up at Walter. "They moved the billing statements to a P.O. box, so I wouldn't see them. And look at this one," Mara said, pointing to a third email. Subject: Consent to electronic disclosures. I, Eleanor Price. Consent to receive all loan documents electronically. I waive the right to paper statements. They silenced the alarms, Mara said. They used your own email to tell the lenders to stop sending paper mail, and they redirected whatever paper mail was left to a box they control. It is a closed loop. You were never supposed to know until the money from the trust hit the account and paid off the debt. The trust, Walter said, speaking for the first time. His voice was gravelly. I need to explain the trust. He looked at me, his expression softening. Your great-aunt Sylvia left money, Walter said. A lot of money. She passed when you were 12. She wanted it to go to you, but she knew your father. She knew he had a hole in his pocket where his conscience should be, so she asked me to structure it. You built the trust? I asked. I helped write the bylaws, Walter said. We set it up so that it would remain invisible until you obtained a graduate degree or turned 35. We wanted you to grow up without the weight of it, and without them trying to spend it for you. But there was a clause. The capacity clause, Mara guessed. Yes, Walter nodded. If the beneficiary you were deemed mentally or physically incapacitated, the natural guardians could petition for administrative control to manage the funds for your care. The room seemed to drop 10 degrees. That's why they wanted the medical records, I said. The realization hit me like a physical blow. That's why they were annoyed I woke up. They needed a doctor to declare me unfit. They needed a paper trail, Mara agreed. A collapse at a public event, a hospitalization, a period of confusion. If they could get a doctor to sign off that you were suffering from a psychotic break or severe nervous exhaustion requiring supervision, they could take that to the trustee. And they would get control of the money, Walter said. And the first thing they would do is pay off the loans they took out in your name. And then they would drain the rest under the guise of managing your recovery. I felt sick. I stood up and walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. They aren't just bad with money, I said, my voice shaking. They were planning to declare me incompetent. They were going to erase me. They were going to manage you, Mara said. But you woke up, and Walter showed up, and now we are going to stop them. She turned a fresh page on her legal pad. We are going to file identity fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus, she said. We are going to file a police report, and we are going to revoke every authorization form that exists. The police? I asked. I have to call the police on my parents. You have to call the police on the people who committed $25,000 worth of fraud in your name, Mara said strictly. The fact that they share your DNA is irrelevant to the statute. We spent the next 2 hours in a blur of bureaucracy. Mara sat next to me as I made the calls. I had to repeat my social security number until it sounded like a meaningless string of digits. I had to answer security questions. I had to explain, over and over, that I did not authorize the inquiry, the loan, or the change of address. It was exhausting, and it was humiliating. When I called the student loan servicer to lock down my account, the representative was skeptical. Ma'am, the access came from a recognized device, he said. An iPad labeled Dad's iPad. Are you sure you didn't just forget? I am sure, I said, gripping the phone. I am the victim here. Please lock the account. Well, if you lock it, you won't be able to make auto payments, he warned. You might default. I don't care, I snapped. Lock it. By the time we left Mara's office, the sun had set. The city was a grid of lights. I felt hollowed out, scraped clean. You need to eat, Walter said, and we need to go to the bank. The bank is closed, I said. Not the main branch, Walter said. They have late hours on Thursdays, and I want to see the signature card on your checking account. We drove to the bank in silence. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket. I didn't look at it, but I knew who it was. The notifications were relentless. Voicemail from Mom. Duration 2 minutes. Text from Dad. We need to talk. Stop acting like a child. Text from unknown number. This is your advisor. Please call us to avoid legal complications regarding the trust distribution. They were swarming. They couldn't find me physically, so they were filling the digital space around me with noise. My nervous system was vibrating, a constant, high-pitched hum of adrenaline. I realized Dr. Evans was right. My body hadn't just collapsed from exhaustion. It had collapsed because it had been living in a state of siege for years. We walked into the brightly lit bank lobby. It was quiet. The only sound the hum of the ATM in the vestibule. We sat down at the desk of a personal banker named Timothy. He looked young, eager, and completely unprepared for the storm Walter was carrying in his coat pocket. "How can I help you today?" Timothy asked, smiling. "We need to review the authorized users on Ms. Price's checking and savings accounts," Walter said. "And we need to see the original signature documents," Timothy typed on his keyboard. "Okay, let me pull that up. Eleanor Price. Here we are. I see the checking account and the high-yield savings." He scanned the screen. "It looks like a joint account structure," Timothy said. "Primary owner, Eleanor Price. Authorized signers, Robert Price and Linda Price." "No," I said. "That's my personal account. I opened it when I was 22. I never added them." "Well," Timothy said, tilting the screen so we could see. "They are listed here. Full administrative access. Added, let's see, 4 years ago." "Show me the form," Walter demanded. Timothy hesitated. "I can't just—" "Show me the form," Walter repeated, his voice dropping an octave. "Or I call the branch manager and the banking commission." Timothy clicked a few buttons and printed a document. He slid it across the desk. It was a change of terms agreement. It added Robert and Linda Price as authorized users with full withdrawal rights. At the bottom was my signature. I looked at it. It wasn't a forgery. It was definitely my handwriting, but it was messy, scrawled. I stared at the date. November 26th, 4 years ago. November 26th, Thanksgiving. The memory hit me with the force of an ice bucket. We were at my parents' house. The table was set with the good china. Everyone was laughing. My father had poured wine. I was tired. I had just started my master's program and was working 2 jobs. My father had been telling a story about the renovation they were planning. Then, casually, as the dessert was being served, he had slid a piece of paper across the tablecloth, right next to the pumpkin pie. "Just a boring bank thing, Ellie," he had said, laughing. "The bank needs to update their privacy policy or something. They sent this for you since your address is still listed here sometimes. Just scribble on it so I can mail it back for you." I remembered holding the pen. I remembered the wine making me feel warm and compliant. I remembered thinking, I don't want to ruin the mood by reading the fine print. So I signed it. I signed it to keep the peace. I signed it because I trusted them. "I signed it," I whispered, feeling the blood drain from my face. "At Thanksgiving, they told me it was a privacy policy update." "It wasn't," Walter said, reading the document. "It was a keys to the kingdom clause. It gave them the right to view your balance, transfer funds, and link this account to other debts." "I gave it to them," I said. "I handed it to them." "You were tricked," Walter said firmly. "There is a difference. Revoke it," I told Timothy. "Remove them, right now, and change the account number. Close it and open a new one. I want a new debit card. I want a new password. I want a verbal passcode on the account that only I know." Timothy typed furiously, looking pale. "Okay, done. The old cards are deactivated. Your parents. They won't be able to log in anymore." "Good," I said. As we walked out of the bank, the night air felt sharp. I felt a strange mixture of shame and clarity. I had been a participant in my own exploitation. I had traded my autonomy for their approval, signature by signature, year after year. "Don't beat yourself up," Walter said, unlocking the truck. "They raised you to be compliant. It takes a long time to unlearn that." "I'm not beating myself up," I said, climbing into the cab. "I'm getting angry." We drove back to Walter's house. The street was dark, the houses silent. But as we turned into the driveway, the headlights swept across a silver sedan parked at the curb. My stomach dropped. "It's them," I said. My parents were standing on Walter's front porch. They were illuminated by the yellow glow of the porch light. My mother was wearing a long beige cardigan, wrapping it around herself as if she were cold. My father was pacing, his phone pressed to his ear. Walter turned off the engine. The silence in the truck was absolute. "You don't have to talk to them," Walter said. "Yes," I said. "I do." We got out. My legs felt heavy, but steady. We walked up the driveway. My father saw us first. He lowered his phone and hung up. He put on a smile, a tight, grimacing thing that didn't reach his eyes. "Finally," he called out. "We have been waiting here for an hour. Walter, you really should give Eleanor a key if she's going to be crashing here." "She isn't crashing," Walter said, walking up the steps. "She is recovering." "Eleanor," my mother said, stepping forward. She reached out as if to hug me, but I took a step back. Her hands fell to her sides. She looked hurt. "Honey, we are so worried. You ran off without telling us, and then we get these notifications. Something about the bank account being closed." "I closed it," I said. "Why?" she asked, her eyes wide and innocent. "That makes it so hard for us to transfer money if you need it." "I don't need it," I said, "and I don't need you transferring money out of it." "Eleanor," my father warned, his voice deepening, "watch your tone. We are here to help you fix this mess." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. "We know about the letter from the trust," he said. "We know it came today. Look, we know it's overwhelming, legal jargon, tax implications. It's a lot for a young woman who just had a medical episode." He held the paper out. "This is just a standard form," he said casually, his voice dropping into that familiar, soothing register he used when he wanted something. "It just designates us as the interim managers, just for the transition period. We'll handle the lawyers, the taxes, the meetings. You just rest. You just focus on getting better. We'll take care of the heavy lifting." "Like you took care of the loan?" I asked. My father froze. "That was a bridge loan, to help the family, to help your inheritance grow." "It wasn't for me," I said. "It was for the renovation. It's all the same pot." "Eleanor," he snapped, losing the soothing tone. "It's all family money. Why are you being so selfish? We raised you. We supported you." "You used me," I said. "Just sign the paper." "Eleanor," my mother pleaded. "Please, if you don't sign it by tomorrow, the taxes, the penalties, it will be a disaster. We are just trying to save you from making a mistake." She stepped closer, holding a pen. She looked so desperate, so fragile. The old instinct to fix it for her, to smooth the worry from her face, surged in my chest. It would be so easy. Just one signature. Then they would smile. Then they would hug me. Then I could sleep. I looked at the pen. I looked at the paper. "No," I said. My father's face turned red. He took a step toward me, aggressive, his physical presence looming. "You ungrateful little—" Walter stepped between us. He moved with a speed I didn't think he possessed. He placed his body like a shield between me and my father. He didn't raise a fist. He didn't shout. He just stood there, solid as an oak tree. "Robert," Walter said. His voice was very soft. It was the sound of a tectonic plate shifting deep underground. My father stopped. "You don't touch her paperwork again," Walter said. My father looked at Walter, then at me. He saw something in my face, maybe the reflection of Walter's steel that told him the old tricks wouldn't work tonight. "You're making a mistake," my father spat. "You'll come crawling back when you realize you can't handle the real world." "I'm already in the real world," I said. "You're the ones living in a fantasy." "Let's go, Linda," my father said, turning sharply. My mother looked at me one last time. A single tear tracked down her cheek. It might have been real. It might have been performance. I realized it didn't matter anymore. "Call us when you come to your senses," she whispered. They walked to their silver sedan. We watched them drive away, their taillights disappearing into the dark. I stood on the porch, shivering. Walter put his arm around my shoulders. "You did good, Ellie," he said. "You did good." I looked down at my hands. They were still shaking, but for the first time in years, they felt like my own. The morning after the confrontation on the porch, the silence in Walter's house was different. It was no longer the silence of holding one's breath. It was the silence of a strategist studying a map. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of black coffee, watching the steam rise, while Walter spoke on the phone in the hallway. He was calling the locksmith. We had an appointment with Mara at 10 o'clock. I dressed in the only other outfit I had packed, jeans and a sweater that felt too heavy for the humid morning. I felt like I was wearing armor. When we arrived at Kellis Row, Mara was already in motion. She had a new stack of papers on her desk, and her expression was even more severe than the day before. "Sit down," she said, skipping the pleasantries. "We received a call from the university's legal department this morning, standard protocol, because you were transported by emergency services from a university-sanctioned event. An incident report was generated." "An incident report?" I asked. "Yes, it details the response, the transport, and the notifications made." But here's the interesting part. The university noted that they received a follow-up inquiry yesterday afternoon. A man claiming to be your legal guardian contacted the Dean of Students' office attempting to obtain a written statement regarding your medical fitness and capacity to participate in administrative duties. I stared at her. "My father called the dean. He tried to get the university to go on record about your health," Mara said. "Why?" "To prove I was sick," I guessed. "Or to prove the opposite," Walter said from the chair beside me. "To create a record that could be used either way. If you refused to sign the trust papers, they could use the collapse to argue you were unstable. If you agreed to sign, they could use a statement of recovery to rush the paperwork through." Mara nodded. "Exactly. It is a pivot strategy. They are trying to control the narrative of your physical body to suit their financial timeline, which brings me to the loan." She slid a document across the polished table. It was a printout from the Briarstone lending file we had requested. "I had my forensic accountant look at the loan application structure," Mara said. "This $25,000 loan wasn't underwritten based on your income as a graduate student. You don't make enough to qualify for an unsecured personal loan of that size." "Then how did they get it?" I asked. "They listed an asset," Mara said. "Under anticipated liquidity events, they listed trust distribution, June 2026. They included a redacted copy of the trust summary page." I felt the air leave the room. "They borrowed against money I didn't even know I had," I said. "They spent it before I even graduated. They were banking on the timeline," Mara said. "Your graduation was the trigger. The moment you crossed that stage, the trust matured. They assumed they would have you sign the management rights over to them immediately. They would use the trust funds to pay off the Briarstone loan, and you would never be the wiser. It was a Ponzi scheme, Eleanor, and you were the investor." "And the collapse ruined the timeline," Walter said grimly. "That is why they were so angry. Not because you were hurt, but because a medical emergency draws attention. It brings in doctors. It brings in paperwork. It slows down the transfer." I looked at the document. Anticipated liquidity. That was me. I wasn't a daughter. I was a liquidity event. "We need to go to the bank," Walter said, standing up. "Not the checking account, the vault." The First National Bank of Oak Creek was an old building with marble floors and brass teller cages. It smelled of money and dust. Walter had a safe deposit box there, one he had opened the year I was born. He led me into the viewing room, a small windowless cubicle with a single table. He placed a long, narrow metal box on the table and opened the lid. Inside, there were no jewels or gold bars. There was just a thick, sealed packet. "I wrote this when you were 18, Walter said, his hand resting on the envelope. "I updated it when you were 25. I put it here because I knew, eventually, we would end up in a room like this. He slid the packet to me. It was labeled Eleanor. Read only when you are ready to see. I broke the seal. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. It was a vibration of anticipation. Inside were copies of the trust documents, the real ones, unredacted, and a letter, handwritten on yellow legal pad paper. Dear Ellie, if you are reading this, it means the dam has finally broken. I am sorry. I have watched you for years. I have watched you make yourself smaller so that your parents would have more room. I remember when you were 7, and you broke your arm falling off the swing set. You didn't cry because your mother was on the phone. You sat on the grass holding your arm, waiting for her to finish, because you had already learned that her convenience was more important than your pain. You have a habit, Ellie, of rationalizing neglect. You tell yourself that because they didn't hit you. They didn't hurt you. You tell yourself that because they paid for dinner. They bought the right to consume your life. You believe that love is proven through endurance. You think that if you can just carry enough of their weight, they will finally love you back. They won't. They can't. They are empty wells, and you will dry yourself out trying to fill them. I built this trust with safeguards. Clause 4. A no distribution without an in-person interview with the beneficiary, Clause 7c. Any attempt by a third party to claim incapacity triggers an automatic freeze and external audit. I put these here because I knew they would try to steer you. I just hope that by the time you read this, you are strong enough to take the wheel. Love, Grandpa. I put the letter down. I didn't cry. Crying implies sadness. What I felt was the shattering of a glass ceiling I hadn't realized was pressing down on my head. You think that if you can just carry enough of their weight, they will finally love you back. That was it. That was the formula of my entire life. Every good grade, every skipped vacation, every time I signed a paper without reading it, it was an offering. I was buying my place in the family. You knew, I whispered. You knew what they were. I knew, Walter said. And I let it happen. I let you think it was normal because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid that if I told you the truth before you were ready, you would defend them, Walter said. And they would cut me off. And then I wouldn't be able to watch you. I wouldn't be there when the collapse finally happened. He reached across the table and covered my hand with his. I chose access over honesty, he said. And I am sorry. You were there, I said. You were the only one who came. I put the letter back in the box. We need to trigger the freeze. Clause 7c. They tried to claim incapacity with the medical records request. That triggers the audit. Yes, Walter said. It does. We went back to Walter's house to make the call, but before we could dial the number for the trust administrator, my phone lit up. It was my mother, but this time, she wasn't calling to scold. She sent a voice text. I pressed play. Eleanor, it's Mom. Please pick up. It's an emergency. Your father. The bank called about the loan, the Briarstone one. They're saying there's a fraud alert, Eleanor. You have to call them and tell them it's a mistake. If they freeze that account, the contractor is going to walk off the job. We have a hole in the kitchen wall. We can't live like this. Please. We only borrowed it. We were going to pay it back as soon as the distribution came through. Don't destroy the family over a misunderstanding. Please. Her voice cracked on the word. Family. It was a masterful performance. It shifted from panic to guilt to responsibility in 30 seconds. They know, I said. Mara filed the fraud alert this morning. Briarstone froze the funds. Good, Walter said. She says they have a hole in the kitchen wall, I said. They have a hole in their logic, Walter countered. Do not answer. But I needed to answer, not to capitulate, to confirm. I hit the record button on Walter's old cassette player. He kept it for dictation and placed my phone on the table. I dialed my mother back. She answered on the first ring. Eleanor, thank God. You need to call Briarstone right now. Tell them you authorized the loan. Tell them it was a verbal agreement. I can't do that. Mom, I said. My voice was steady, surprising even me. Because I didn't authorize it. Eleanor, listen to me, she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. We are in a temporary financial emergency. The renovation went over budget. Your father made some investments that are tied up. We just needed a bridge. That money is going to be yours anyway. We just accessed it a few months early. What is the difference? The difference is that you forged my signature, I said, and you lied to a lender. We didn't lie, she cried. We are your parents. Your money is our money. That is how families work. Is that how families work? I asked. Did you sign the medical authorization form? Mom, the one that let you see my records. There was a pause, a hesitation. I had to, she said. You were unconscious. I was worried. I wasn't unconscious yesterday morning, I said. I was awake, and you signed it anyway. You forged it. It was necessary, she snapped. We needed to know what the doctors were saying. We needed to know if you were going to be difficult. Difficult, I repeated. You mean, if I was going to be competent? You are being ungrateful, she hissed. After everything we have done, after the tuition, after the car we bought you when you were 20. I paid for the car. Mom, I said. I made the payments. You just put the title in your name to save on insurance. I see that now. You are destroying us, she sobbed. If this investigation continues, your father could lose his license. He sells insurance. Eleanor, a fraud investigation will kill his career. Do you want that? Do you want your father to be unemployed because you couldn't share a little bit of your trust fund? The language shifted so fast. Emergency, misunderstanding, ungrateful, destroying us. They were weaponizing their own vulnerability. I didn't start the investigation, I said. You did, when you used my name. You are cold, she said. I don't know who you are anymore. Walter has poisoned you. Walter gave me the antidote, I said. I hung up. I pressed stop on the cassette player. My hands were shaking, vibrating with the adrenaline of the confrontation. She admitted it, Walter said softly. She admitted the forgery and the motive. She said I'm destroying the family, I said, looking at the device. The family was already destroyed, Walter said. You are just turning on the lights so they can see the wreckage. The adrenaline crash left me feeling hollow. I sat on the sofa, staring at the wall. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a notification from the pharmacy app. Prescription status on hold. Contact pharmacy. I frowned. I hadn't ordered anything. Grandpa, I said, can we go to the pharmacy? The one in town, I need to ask them something. We drove to the chain drugstore on Main Street. The pharmacist, a woman named Linda who had known Walter for years, looked concerned when she saw me. Eleanor, she said, I'm glad you came in. We got a weird flag on your account. What kind of flag? Well, she said, turning her monitor so I couldn't see the details, but referencing them. There was a request processed 3 days ago for the refill of your anxiety medication, but also for a new prescription, determining, she squinted, Adderall, generic, 30 milligrams. I don't have a prescription for Adderall, I said. That's what I thought, Linda said. But the request came through the online portal. It looked like a transfer from a telehealth provider, and then it was picked up. Picked up by who? The log says family/guardian. A Linda Price signed for it. And the refill for my anxiety meds, I asked. The dosage. It was bumped up, Linda said. The doctor's note in the system said, patient requests increase due to exam stress. That request also came through the portal. I felt the blood drain from my face. How did they get into the portal? I asked. Linda tapped a few keys. It looks like there was a password reset initiated last week. The confirmation code was sent to, let me see, a mobile number ending in 4490. That was my mother's number. They reset my password, I said, gripping the counter. They logged in. They requested a higher dose of my meds, and they ordered a stimulant using a telehealth service in my name. Why? Linda asked, horrified. To make me perform, I whispered. They wanted me to get through graduation. They wanted me to be on. They drugged me. The realization was worse than the financial theft. Money was abstract. This was biological. They had tinkered with my brain chemistry from an iPad in their kitchen. They had risked my heart, my sanity, my life, just to ensure I walked across that stage and triggered the trust fund. They treated me like a racehorse, I said. They injected me to get me across the finish line. I need to report this, Linda said seriously. This is unauthorized access and potentially practicing medicine without a license if they impersonated you to a telehealth doctor. Do it, Walter said. His voice was shaking with rage. Report it all. Pull the IP addresses. Pull the signature logs. We want the footage of who picked up the bag. I can get the footage, Linda said. I'll call corporate security right now. We walked out of the pharmacy into the blinding afternoon sun. I felt cold. Deeply, shivering cold. They didn't just want the money, I said to Walter. They didn't care if I survived getting it to them. The doctor said the interaction could have killed me. Walter stopped on the sidewalk. He turned to me and grabbed my shoulders. I need you to hear me, he said. This is not just greed. This is malice. It is a total disregard for your existence as a human being. They see you as an extension of their will. If the extension breaks, they just try to glue it back together long enough to sign the check. I know, I said. I stayed quiet for too long, Walter said. I thought if I kept the peace, I could protect you from the worst of it. But peace is just a heavy lid on a boiling pot. I was wrong. You're here now, I said. Yes, Walter said. And now we stop playing defense. Back at the house, we called Mara. We put her on speakerphone. We have new information, I said. The medication interaction wasn't an accident. They accessed my pharmacy account. They ordered the stimulants. They increased my anxiety meds. My mother picked them up. There was a long silence on the other end. That changes things, Mara said. Her voice was ice cold. That moves this from fraud to reckless endangerment, possibly battery, depending on how the prosecutor looks at it. I want to send the letters, I said. All of them. To the banks, to the trust, to the lenders. We are drafting them now, Mara said. But Eleanor, you need to be prepared. Once we send these, there is no going back. The investigation will become criminal. Your parents could face jail time. I thought about the hospital room. I thought about the text messages complaining about the dinner reservation. I thought about the hole in the kitchen wall they were filling with my life. They made their choice, I said. Send the letters. Okay, Mara said. We are escalating. We are notifying the trust of the incapacity attempt. That will freeze the assets immediately. We are notifying Briarstone that the loan was fraudulent. That will trigger their internal investigation. And we are filing the police report regarding the pharmacy access. It's not revenge, I said. More to myself than to her. No, Mara agreed. Revenge is emotional. This is containment. You are containing a threat. We hung up. Walter went to the kitchen to make tea. I sat at the table, looking at the stack of evidence we had gathered. The letters, the logs, the forged signatures. It was a map of my life, redrawn by people who claimed to love me. I picked up a pen and pulled a blank sheet of paper toward me. I started to write a list, not of things to do, but of things that were true. 1. My name is Eleanor Price. 2. I am not a bridge. 3. I am not a liquidity event. 4. I survived. I looked at the list. It was short, but it was solid. It was the foundation of a house that wouldn't have holes in the walls. Tea, Walter said, placing a mug in front of me. Grandpa, I said. What happens when the money freezes? What happens when they realize the tap is truly dry? They will scream, Walter said. They will threaten. They will tell everyone who will listen that you are a monster who abandoned her aging parents. I can live with that, I said. Can you? Walter asked. It is a heavy thing, to be the villain in someone else's story. I'd rather be the villain in their story, I said, taking a sip of the hot tea, than the victim in mine. Walter smiled. It was a small, sad smile, but it reached his eyes. Then let them scream, he said. The walls here are thick. We sat in the kitchen as the sun went down, waiting for the inevitable explosion, but for the first time in 33 years, I wasn't waiting for permission to breathe. I was just breathing. And that, I realized, was the most dangerous thing I could possibly do. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a courier who required a signature. It was a heavy, cream-colored envelope with the embossed logo of Hollowcrest Fiduciary Services. It was the letter my father had asked about, the one he had been desperate for me to sign blindly. I sat at Walter's kitchen table and opened it. The paper was thick, the kind that whispered money when you unfolded it. Dear Ms. Price, regarding the Sylvia Price Testamentary Trust. We are writing to confirm your appointment on Thursday, January 22nd, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, to review beneficiary identity and discuss distribution readiness. Please note that per the recent notification regarding your medical status, we have prepared the necessary custodial forms should you require a representative. I read the sentence twice. Per the recent notification regarding your medical status. They called them, I said, handing the letter to Walter. They told the trust office I was sick. Walter put on his reading glasses. His jaw tightened as he scanned the page. They didn't just say you were sick, Walter said. They tried to trigger the incapacity clause. They told the fiduciary that you were medically unable to manage your affairs, likely citing the hospitalization. They tried to take over before I even got out of the hospital bed, I said. The coldness in my chest was becoming a familiar sensation, a permanent drop in internal temperature. We are going to that meeting, Walter said, and we are going to walk in on our own 2 feet. The offices of Hollowcrest Fiduciary Services were located in a glass tower downtown, 3 floors above Mara's law firm. The lobby smelled of leather and silence. A receptionist with a headset looked up as we approached. Eleanor Price, I said. I have a 2 o'clock with Mr. Sterling. Of course, she said, her eyes flickering briefly to Walter. Mr. Sterling is expecting you. And the others, I froze. The others, your parents, she said. They arrived 10 minutes ago. They are in the conference room. I looked at Walter. He didn't look surprised. He looked grim. They must have called to confirm the time, Walter said. They knew the letter would trigger a meeting. I don't want to see them, I said, my voice sounding small in the cavernous room. You don't have to talk to them, Walter said. You just have to let them see you. Let them see that you are standing, that you are coherent. That undermines their entire argument. We walked down a long hallway lined with abstract art. The door to the conference room was heavy mahogany. Walter pushed it open. The room was vast, dominated by a table long enough to land a plane on. At the far end sat a man in a pinstripe suit, Mr. Sterling, and sitting across from him, looking for all the world like concerned, respectable citizens, were my parents. My mother was wearing her navy blue church suit. My father was in a blazer and tie. They looked polished. They looked like parents who had arrived to handle a difficult situation with grace. When I walked in, my mother jumped up. Eleanor, she cried, rushing forward with her hands outstretched. Oh, thank God. You made it. She tried to embrace me. I stepped sideways, putting a leather chair between us. Don't, I said. My mother stopped, her face crumbling into a mask of hurt. She looked at Mr. Sterling, then back at me. We were so worried, she said, her voice trembling perfectly. After the collapse, we just wanted to make sure you didn't have to handle all this stress alone. You know what the doctor said about your heart? My heart is fine, Mom, I said. It's my credit report that's the problem. My father stood up. He smiled at Mr. Sterling, a man-to-man look of long-suffering patience. She's a bit agitated, my father said smoothly. The medication makes her mood swing. That is why we are here. To help facilitate, Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. He was a man who clearly disliked mess. He gestured to the empty seats. "Please," he said. "Sit down. We have a few procedural matters to cover." I sat next to Walter. My parents sat opposite us. The table was wide, but it felt like we were breathing the same recycled air. "As you know, Mr. Sterling began, opening a file. The trust established by Sylvia Price matured upon the beneficiary's graduation with a postgraduate degree. We received the confirmation of graduation from the university registrar this morning." He looked at me. "However," he continued, "we also received an affidavit yesterday from Robert and Linda Price, claiming that the beneficiary Eleanor was medically incapacitated following a collapse at the ceremony and requesting emergency temporary guardianship of the assets." He slid a paper across the table. It was a notarized document. I recognized the notary stamp. It was from a friend of my father's, a man who owned a car dealership in Oak Creek. "I am not incapacitated," I said clearly. "I was discharged. I am lucid, and I did not request guardianship." "Of course you think that. Honey," my father said gently, "but you are not well. You are staying in a guest room. You aren't working. We just want to manage the investment for you until you get back on your feet. Just for a year or two." "No," Walter said. My father's eyes snapped to Walter. "This doesn't concern you." "Walter." "It concerns the trust," Walter said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the original bylaws, the ones he had shown me in the bank vault. "Clause 4A, Walter said, placing the yellow document on the polished wood. "Mr. Sterling looked at it. He adjusted his glasses. "Clause 4A, Sterling read, "Beneficiary confirmation. No distribution or transfer of administrative rights shall occur without the beneficiary confirming their identity and capacity in person, accompanied by independent legal counsel, separate from any natural guardians or prior custodians." Sterling looked up. "I see. She is here in person," Walter said, "and she has retained independent counsel, Mara Kellis of Kellis and Rowe. We are filing the representation paperwork today." My father's face went rigid. The charm evaporated, replaced by a flash of panic. "Independent counsel," he said. "Why do we need lawyers? We are family. This is ridiculous. We are wasting money on fees." "We are protecting the principal," I said. Mr. Sterling looked from my parents to me. He was a fiduciary. His only loyalty was to the document, and the document was clear. "Mr. and Mrs. Price," Sterling said to my parents, "under the terms of the trust, your petition for guardianship is denied based on the beneficiary's presence and objection. The assets will remain frozen pending a full identity verification with Ms. Price's counsel." "Frozen?" My mother gasped. "But the distribution was supposed to happen this week. Eleanor has commitments." "The assets are frozen," Sterling repeated. "Standard procedure when capacity is contested." He turned to me. "Ms. Price, there is one other matter. We noted several inquiries over the last 6 months regarding the specific date of your graduation." I frowned. "I didn't call." "No," Sterling said. "The caller identified himself as a financial planner working on your behalf. He wanted to know if the funds would be available the minute the diploma was handed over. He asked if the graduation date was a hard trigger." I looked at my father. He was staring at the table, a muscle in his jaw jumping. "You called," I said. "You were counting down the days." "I was planning," my father snapped. "Someone has to plan for the future. You were too busy with your books to think about money." Walter made a low, pained exhale. "It was me," Walter whispered. We all looked at him. "I told you," Walter said to my father. "Years ago, when Eleanor was starting high school, I told you that Sylvia set milestones. I use that word, milestones. I told you that if Eleanor hit her milestones, she would be taken care of." He looked at me, his eyes full of regret. "I gave them the map. Eleanor. I didn't mean to, but I did. I told them graduation was the key. You didn't give them the map, I said firmly. You told them there was a destination. They chose to try and hijack the car. Mr. Sterling stood up. I think that concludes our business for today. Miss Price, please have your attorney contact my office to arrange the final verification. Until then, the trust is locked. No one accesses a penny. My parents stood up. They didn't look at me. They walked out of the room stiffly, their dignity hanging by a thread. Walter and I followed a moment later. They were waiting in the parking lot. The heat of the afternoon hit us as we exited the building. The air shimmered off the asphalt. My parents were standing by their silver sedan, which was parked aggressively close to Walter's truck. You are making a mistake, my father hissed as we approached. He wasn't shouting, but his voice carried a vibrating intensity that was scarier than a scream. You are listening to a bitter old man who hates us. I am listening to the facts, I said. And the facts are that you forged my signature. You took out a loan in my name. And you tried to have me declared incompetent. We were protecting you, my mother cried. Tears were streaming down her face, wrecking her makeup. You don't know what it's like. The pressure we have debts. Eleanor, real debts. We did everything for you. Private lessons, camps, the car. We invested in you. And now you want a return on your investment, I said. Is that so wrong? She pleaded. Is it wrong to expect a daughter to help her family when she comes into money? We are drowning. Eleanor, if we don't get that distribution, we lose the house. We lose everything. I felt the pull. It was a physical sensation in my gut, the ancient, wired reflex to fix it, to say, okay, stop crying. I'll sign. I'll give you half. Just stop looking at me like I'm killing you. I looked at my mother. I saw the terror in her eyes. It was real. They really were drowning. But then I remembered the text message. Don't make this dramatic. I remembered the empty hospital room. I remembered the pills. You aren't drowning, I said. You are renovating. You have a hole in your kitchen wall because you wanted a sunroom, not because you needed food. My mother stopped crying. Her face went blank. Who told you that? She whispered. You aren't the only ones who can read a credit report, I said. My father stepped forward. He looked like he wanted to grab me. Walter stepped forward too, his hand resting on the door handle of his truck, his posture ready. You are poisoning her, my father spat at Walter. You always wanted her for yourself. You stole her. I didn't steal her, Walter said calmly. I just picked her up when you dropped her. Let's go. Robert, my mother said. Her voice was suddenly dead, devoid of emotion. She's gone. She's just like him now. They got into their car. My father slammed the door so hard the vehicle shook. They peeled out of the lot, tires screeching. I stood there, watching them go. My heart was pounding, but my hands were still. Are you okay? Walter asked. No, I said, but I'm not going to collapse. The police station was a low brick building that smelled of floor cleaner and stale coffee. It was the antithesis of the fiduciary's office. There was no mahogany here, only linoleum and fluorescent lights that hummed. I sat at a metal desk across from Officer Miller. He was a young man with a kind face and a calm, bureaucratic manner. He typed on a battered keyboard as I spoke. So, you are reporting identity theft, he stated, and the suspects are Robert and Linda Price, I said. My parents. He paused. He looked up. I just need to confirm. You are filing a criminal complaint against your parents. Yes, I said. Okay. Can you list the specific instances of fraud? Unauthorized access to medical records. I listed, my voice sounding mechanical. Forgery of a medical release form. Unauthorized opening of a personal loan with Briarstone Lending in the amount of $25,000. Unauthorized access to a pharmacy account. Impersonation of a patient to obtain prescription narcotics. Officer Miller typed. The keys clacked loudly. Clack, clack, clack. Each keystroke felt like a nail being driven into a coffin. Do you have evidence? He asked. I have the loan documents, I said, sliding the folder Mara had prepared across the desk. I have the forged release form. I have the pharmacy logs showing the password reset from their phone number. He took the folder. He opened it and flipped through the pages. This is thorough, he said. My attorney helped me compile it. Okay, Officer Miller said. I'm going to generate a report number. This will go to a detective in the fraud division. They will likely contact you for a follow-up interview, and they will contact your parents. I know, I said. Once this is filed, he said gently, it becomes the property of the state. You can't just call up and cancel it because you make up at Thanksgiving. Do you understand? There won't be a Thanksgiving, I said. He nodded. He printed a sheet of paper and handed it to me. Incident report number 499-202. It was just a piece of paper, but it weighed 1,000 pounds. It was the document that severed the line. Until this moment, it was a family dispute. Now, it was a crime. I walked out of the station into the cooling evening. Walter was waiting in the truck. I climbed in and handed him the paper. He looked at it. He didn't smile. He just nodded. It's done, he said. It started, I corrected. My phone rang as we were driving back to Walter's house. It was an unknown number. Eleanor Price, a woman's voice asked. Yes. This is Agent Halloway from the Briarstone Lending Fraud Department. We received your attorney's letter. Yes, I said. I didn't authorize the loan. We see that, she said. We have pulled the IP logs and the verification calls. It appears the voice verification was done by a female claiming to be you. But the voice print matches a Linda Price we have on file for a different, older mortgage application. That sounds right, I said. We have tracked the disbursement of the funds. Agent Halloway continued. The $25,000 was not deposited into an account in your name. It was paid directly to a vendor. Oak Creek Custom Builders. A contractor, I said. Yes, we contacted them. They confirmed the funds were applied to a renovation project at 404 Maple Drive for a sunroom and master bath expansion. I closed my eyes. They built a bathroom, I whispered. With my credit. We are reversing the charges and closing the account, Agent Halloway said. But Ms. Price, because the funds were paid to a third party who has already done the work, we will be seeking restitution from the applicants. Your parents, they will be receiving a demand letter for the full amount plus legal fees within 48 hours. Okay, I said. Thank you. I hung up. A sunroom? I said to Walter. They wanted a sunroom. Walter didn't answer. I looked over at him. He was gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. His face was gray, a sheen of sweat on his forehead. He was breathing in shallow, gasping breaths. Grandpa, I asked, panic spiking in my chest. Chest, he wheezed. Tight. Pull over, I screamed. Pull over now. He steered the truck onto the gravel shoulder of the road. He put it in park and slumped back against the seat, clutching his chest. My pills, he gasped. Pocket. I scrambled over the console. I reached into his coat pocket. I found a small metal tin, nitro. Under your tongue, I asked. He nodded. I placed the small pill under his tongue. I held his hand. It was cold. I'm calling 911, I said, reaching for my phone. No, he wheezed. Wait, just stress. Give it a minute. We sat there on the side of the road, trucks rushing past us, shaking the cab. I watched the second hand on the dashboard clock tick. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Color began to return to his face. His breathing slowed. Better, he whispered. It's passing. We are going to the hospital, I said. Doctor, Evans is there. No hospital, Walter said stubbornly. Just home. I'm okay. It's just angina. I've had it for years. You didn't tell me, I said. I didn't want you to worry, he said. I looked at him, this strong, stubborn man who was the only shield I had left, and I realized he was cracking. The stress of the last 3 days, the confrontation, the driving, the anger was killing him. He was absorbing the blows meant for me. We can't keep doing this, I said quietly. It has to end. I can't lose you too. I'm not going anywhere, he said, sitting up straighter. But you're right. We need to finish it. He put the truck in gear. We drove the rest of the way in silence. But the air in the cab had changed. The urgency wasn't just about money or justice anymore. It was about time. I was racing a clock I hadn't known was ticking. That night, after Walter went to bed, I called Mara. "It's time," I said. "For what?" Mara asked. She sounded tired. "The final meeting," I said. "I want them in a room. I want everything on the table. The bank records, the trust documents, the pharmacy logs, the police report. I want to look them in the eye and show them exactly what they bought with that loan." "Eleanor," Mara warned, "confrontations rarely give you the closure you want. They usually just lead to more screaming." "I don't want closure," I said. "I want capitulation. I want them to sign a document stating they have no claim on me, my money, or my medical decisions ever again. And I want them to know that if they come near me or Walter, I will press charges." "We can arrange a settlement conference," Mara said. "We can invite them to the office. We can have a court reporter present." "Do it," I said. "Tomorrow." "Are you sure you're ready?" Mara asked. "They will be cornered animals. They will say things you can't unhear." I looked at the closed door of Walter's bedroom. I listened to the sound of his breathing, heavy and rhythmic. "I'm ready," I said. I spent the rest of the night rehearsing. I stood in front of the mirror in the guest room. I practiced my face. I practiced keeping it neutral. No tears, no anger. Anger was fuel for them. It proved I still cared. I needed to be a stone. They will say I am ungrateful. They will say I am cruel. They will say they did it for me. I repeated the accusations to my reflection until the words lost their sting. I am not ungrateful. I am observant. I am not cruel. I am consequential. They didn't do it for me. They did it for a sunroom. I went to bed at 3 a.m. I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to the wind in the trees, visualizing the stack of papers in Mara's office. The evidence was a weapon, but the real weapon was my refusal to play the role they had written for me. For 33 years, I had been the daughter, the fixer, the bridge. Tomorrow, I would just be the plaintiff. The conference room at Kellis Row was designed to intimidate. It was a glass box suspended 4 stories above the city traffic, sterile and devoid of warmth. The air conditioning hummed with a low, expensive quiet. I sat at the head of the table. To my right sat Mara, her laptop open, her face composed in a mask of professional indifference. To my left sat Walter. He looked tired. His skin had a gray, papery quality that scared me, but he sat upright, his hands folded on the polished wood. In the center of the table was a black speakerphone. The green light was on. "Agent Holloway, can you hear us?" Mara asked. "Loud and clear." The voice crackled from the device. It was the investigator from Briarstone Lending. "We are just waiting for the other parties," Mara said. I looked at the folder in front of me. It was 2 inches thick. It contained the autopsy of my relationship with my parents. There were the bank logs, the pharmacy records, the forged medical release, the trust documents, and the police report incident number. "Remember," Mara said softly, leaning toward me, "you do not have to answer their questions. You are here to deliver information, not to debate it." "I know," I said. My heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was just ready for the surgery to be over. The door opened. The receptionist ushered them in. My parents looked different than they had in the parking lot yesterday. The frantic aggression was gone, replaced by a performance of weary, misunderstood virtue. My father wore his best suit, the one he wore to church on Easter. My mother was dressed in soft pastels, clutching a tissue. They hesitated at the door. Scanning the room, they saw the lawyer. They saw the speakerphone. They saw Walter. "Eleanor," my mother said, her voice trembling just the right amount. "We didn't know if you would actually show up." "Sit down," I said. I didn't gesture to a specific chair. I just stated the command. My father stiffened. He didn't like being ordered, but he looked at Mara, then at the recording light on the phone, and he swallowed his pride. He pulled out a chair for my mother, then sat beside her. "We brought the paperwork," my father said, placing a thin folder on the table. "The trust management agreement. We thought, if we can just talk this through, without all the drama, we can sign it and get everyone back to normal." "There is no normal," I said. "And we aren't here to sign your agreement." "Then why are we here?" my mother asked, looking at Walter with eyes that promised retribution later. "To humiliate us." "We are here to establish the timeline," I said. I opened my folder. I took out the first document. It was a printout of the ambulance log. 7 days ago, I began, my voice steady. "I collapsed on stage at Marblegate University. I was transported to Larkfield Medical Center in a state of cardiac distress." "We know this," my father said impatiently. "We were sick with worry." "At 10:14 in the morning," I continued, ignoring him. "The hospital contacted you. You did not answer. At 10:22. They contacted you again. You answered. You were informed I was unconscious. You declined to come." "We didn't decline," my mother protested. "We said we were waiting for an update traffic was." "At 9:15 the next morning," I went on, turning the page. "While I was still in the hospital, a user logged into my medical patient portal. They uploaded a designation of representative form. I slid the copy of the forged document across the table. It landed in front of my mother. The signature is dated the previous day," I said, "when I was unconscious, but the metadata on the upload shows it was created on an iPad registered to Dad's office." My mother looked at the paper. She didn't touch it. "We needed to know what the doctors were saying," she whispered. "We have a right." "You forged my signature," I said. "That is a felony." "It was a family emergency," my father snapped. "Legalities don't apply when your child is in the hospital." "They do when you use the information to file for guardianship," Mara interjected, her voice cutting through the air like a scalpel. I turned another page. 3 days ago," I said, "a hard inquiry was run on my credit report by Briarstone Lending for a refinance of a $25,000 personal loan." "We told you," my father said, leaning forward, his face flushing red. "That was a bridge loan. We were managing your assets. The trust was maturing. We just accessed the liquidity early." "Agent Holloway," Mara said to the speakerphone. "I am here," the voice said. My parents froze. They stared at the black box. "Agent Holloway," Mara said, "can you confirm for the record where the funds from the Eleanor Price loan application were dispersed?" "Yes," Agent Holloway said. Her voice was professional, bored, and devastating. "The funds were wired directly to a vendor account, Oak Creek Custom Builders." "And what was the invoice for?" Mara asked. "Invoice number 4492. Holloway read, "Construction of a 4-season sunroom and master bathroom expansion at 404 Maple Drive." The silence in the room was absolute. It was a vacuum. "A sunroom," I said. I looked at my mother. I waited for her to deny it. I waited for her to say it was a mistake. She looked down at her hands. "It adds value to the estate," she mumbled. "It's an investment. You would have inherited the house eventually." "You renovated your bathroom with my credit score," I said. "And you told me it was for the family." "It is for the family," she cried, looking up, tears finally spilling over. "We live there. We raised you there. Why do you begrudge us a little comfort after everything we sacrificed?" "Did you submit any documents using Eleanor's name to secure that loan?" Mara asked. It was the trap question. If they said yes, they confessed to bank fraud. If they said no, they claimed the bank made a mistake, which the investigator would refute. My father opened his mouth, then he closed it. He looked at the speakerphone. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that he wasn't the smartest person in the room. "We might have helped with the paperwork," my father stammered. "Eleanor is so busy we handle the administration." "I never saw the paperwork," I said. I never saw the money. I never saw the contractor. You did it for yourselves, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. You did it for yourselves, and you assumed I would carry it because I always do. You assumed I would wake up, see the debt, and just work harder to pay it off, because that's what Eleanor does. Eleanor fixes it. You are being incredibly selfish, my mother hissed. Over $25,000. That is nothing compared to what we spent on you. It's not about the money, I said. I pulled out the pharmacy log. You logged into my pharmacy account, I said. You reset the password. You impersonated me to a telehealth doctor. You ordered stimulants. And you upped my anxiety medication. My mother went pale. This was the one thing she couldn't spin as financial management. I didn't, she started. We have the IP address, I said, and we have the footage of you picking it up. Mom, the pharmacist knows you. I wanted you to get through graduation, she shouted, slamming her hand on the table. You were falling apart. You were whining about stress. I just wanted to give you a boost so you wouldn't embarrass us. A boost, I repeated. You gave me a drug interaction that stopped my heart. You're fine, she screamed. Look at you. You're sitting there. You're fine. I am fine, I said. But the family is dead. My father stood up. He loomed over the table, his face purple with rage. That is enough, he bellowed. I am done with this court-martial. You ungrateful, spiteful little girl. We are your parents. You owe us. You owe us your life. He pointed a shaking finger at Walter. And you, he snarled. You orchestrated this. You turned her against us. You want her money for yourself. Walter didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He reached into his own folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I don't want her money, Walter said quietly. And neither do you. What is that? My father demanded. This, Walter said, is a letter I filed with the Hollowcrest Fiduciary Office 5 years ago. It is an addendum to the trust. He slid it across the table. Read Clause 7C, Walter said. My father snatched the paper. He read it. His eyes widened. The color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly, mottled gray. What does it say? My mother asked, tugging at his sleeve. It says, Walter said, looking at me, that if any third party attempts to claim incapacity on behalf of the beneficiary or attempts to gain guardianship of the assets without the beneficiary's explicit, in-person consent, the trust is automatically frozen. Frozen, my mother whispered. Not just frozen, Walter continued. It triggers a mandatory third-party audit of all prior financial interactions between the beneficiary and the guardians, and the funds remain locked until the audit is complete. How long does an audit take? My mother asked, her voice trembling. Years, Mara answered, especially when there is evidence of fraud. You set a trap, my father whispered, staring at Walter. I built a fence, Walter corrected. You are the ones who tried to climb it. You realized, I said, looking at my father, that by trying to declare me incompetent to get the money faster, you actually ensured you will never see a dime of it. You locked the door yourselves. My father threw the paper on the table. It slid across the wood and fluttered to the floor. You did this, he accused Walter. You ruined us. You ruined yourselves, Walter said. I just protected Eleanor. My father looked at me. His eyes were wild, desperate. He looked like a cornered animal realizing there was no exit. Eleanor, he said, his voice dropping to a low, threatening growl. Fix this. Call the trustee. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you are fine. Tell them we are your representatives. No, I said. If you don't, he stepped closer, leaning over the table. I will make sure everyone knows. I will tell the family you are mentally unstable. I will tell them you abandoned us. I will sue you for support. I will make your life a living hell. My body remembered the old script. My stomach clenched. My shoulders wanted to hunch. The instinct to collapse, to make myself small, to beg for forgiveness. rushed through my veins like a drug. Collapse. The instinct whispered, "It's safer down there." I took a deep breath. I felt the floor under my feet. I felt the hard wood of the chair against my spine. I looked at Walter, who was watching me, trusting me. I didn't collapse. I stayed upright. "You can't make my life a hell," I said calmly, "because you are no longer in it." My father looked like he was going to strike me. He raised his hand. "Sit down, Mr. Price," Mara said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of the entire legal system. "Or I will have security remove you." My father froze. He looked at the camera in the corner of the room. He lowered his hand. "This isn't over," he spat. "It is," Mara said. "And now, we are going to discuss the consequences." She opened a new file. "The police report for identity theft has been filed," she said. "The investigation into the pharmacy access is active. Briarstone Lending is initiating proceedings to recover the $25,000 from you directly. They will likely place a lien on your home." "Our home," my mother gasped. "The home you renovated with stolen money," Mara said. "Yes. You sent the police." My mother looked at me, horrified. "Eleanor, how could you? We are your mother and father. You stopped being my parents when you decided I was a resource," I said. "You became suspects. We will pay it back," my father said quickly. "We will find the money. Just drop the charges." "It is out of my hands," I said. "It is the state's case now." "You can stop it," he shouted. "You can tell them it was a misunderstanding." "But it wasn't," I said. "It was a plan." I stood up. My legs felt strong. "I am leaving now," I said. "Walter is leaving now. We are going to walk out that door, and you are going to stay here and talk to Agent Halloway about the repayment schedule." "Eleanor, please," my mother sobbed. She reached for me again. "Don't leave us like this. We love you." I looked at her. I saw the fear. I saw the narcissism. I saw the bottomless hole of her need. "I know you think you do," I said. "And that is the saddest part." I turned to Walter. "Let's go." Walter stood up. He looked at his son. "My father, one last time." "Goodbye, Robert," Walter said. My father didn't answer. He just stared at the table, defeated by his own greed. We walked to the door, but before I opened it, I remembered the last document. The one I had prepared that morning. I turned back. "One last thing," I said. I pulled a single sheet of paper from the back of my folder. I walked back to the table and slid it across to them. "What is this?" my father muttered, not looking up. "It is a notification," I said. He looked at it. "Official change of emergency contact and medical proxy. Primary contact, Walter Price. Secondary contact, Mara Kellis. Note, Robert and Linda Price are strictly prohibited from receiving medical information, making decisions, or visiting in the event of incapacitation." "If I ever collapse again," I said, my voice ringing in the silence of the room, "if I ever end up in a hospital bed, or in an ambulance, or in a crisis, no one will call you." My mother looked up, her face stricken. "But what if you die?" "Then you will read about it in the newspaper," I said. I turned and walked out the door. Walter followed me. We walked down the long hallway, past the abstract art, past the receptionist. We stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut, sealing us in a quiet, silver box. Walter leaned against the wall. He let out a long, shaky breath. "Are you okay?" I asked, checking his color. "I'm tired," he admitted. "But I'm okay." He looked at me. "I'm sorry, Ellie. I should have done this 10 years ago. I should have protected you before they hollowed you out." I took his hand. It was warm and rough. "You didn't need to protect me from the world," I said. "You just needed to give me the map so I could save myself." "You did good in there," he said. "I learned from the best," I replied. The elevator chimed. The doors opened onto the lobby. The street outside was bustling with strangers living their lives. worrying about bills and dinners and graduation dates. I stepped out into the sunlight. The air felt different. It felt lighter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying the weight of two other adults on my back. I was broke. I was estranged. I had a fraud investigation to manage and a dissertation to defend. But I was free. I checked my phone. There were no new messages. I had blocked their numbers before I entered the room. I looked at Walter. "What now?" I asked. "Now," Walter smiled. "Now we go get some real soup, and then you live your life." "My life," I repeated. It sounded strange. It sounded wonderful. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the city air. I wasn't a bridge. I wasn't a bank account. I wasn't a disappointment. I was Eleanor Price. And for the first time, that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a journey of betrayal, realization, and finally, liberation. I hope Eleanor's strength resonated with you as much as it did with me. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please drop a comment below with your country or city. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. And tell me in the comments, do you think Eleanor did the right thing by cutting them off completely? Or would you have given them one more chance? I can't wait to read your thoughts. Until next time, stay safe and stand your ground.